And a big thank you to Desert Financial Credit Union for sponsoring our KRIM Community Spotlight program. Good morning, Rim Country. Chris Higgins in the studio. Happy Hump Day to everyone out there listening or watching on our KRIM FM Facebook page. That's right, we're live streaming our Community Spotlight program, so you can watch them as well. Well, this morning we have Banner Payson Medical Center on our Spotlight program. We have CEO Hoyt Scabelin. Good morning, Hoyt.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're so welcome. And new General Surgeon, Dr. Bruce Palmer. Good morning, Dr. Palmer.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Hey, thank you for coming on this morning. And we're going to learn a little bit more about Dr. Palmer and just what's happening at Banner Payson Medical Center. It's exciting. I think you mentioned this before, Hoyt. Dr. Palmer having a new General Surgeon in at Banner Payson Medical Center, and again, you were very excited about that.
I'm super excited to be sitting here today next to this man. His interest in Payson, I consider a miracle for us and an answer to prayer. And I'm not unabashedly will tell you that I pray for this hospital every day and the staff and for the patients we serve and for our community. And so finding Dr. Palmer, or him finding us, actually is a miracle. And we had to compete with the great state of Alaska in his final selection, and so we're thrilled to have him. We now have 3 general surgeons. We have Dr. Bruce Palmer seated here, Dr. Susan Horn, and Dr. Lloyd Olson are the other 2 longer-standing surgeons, and the 3 together are a good team. And Dr. Palmer could speak more of this than I can effectively, but they each have areas that they're particularly talented and skilled at that maybe the others have less interest in, so they complement one another really well, it seems to me.
Oh, that's great. That I think is the epitome of a team.
Amen, for sure.
So Dr. Palmer, we were talking a little bit before the program, and I have to say you retired from the Air Force, best ranch out there, you know, being a fellow Air Force as well, and you were stationed up in Alaska before you came to Arizona.
I was. Actually, my very last station was down in Virginia, but we maintained a house up in Alaska because we knew we were only going to be in Virginia for a year. But we were up in Alaska for 5 years prior to that, and we fell in love with it. But I was stationed up there at Elmendorf Air Force Base, now Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson is what it's referred to now. But yes, that was sort of our last home, was up there.
So how long were you in the Air Force?
24 years total.
Yeah. Wow, 24 years. And you mentioned before the program you were stationed at Luke as well. How long were you?
Stationed there for 6 years, actually.
Oh, okay.
That's my hometown. I grew up in Phoenix, and so it was nice after being at multiple other places to be closer to home. My parents still lived in the same house that I grew up with.
Wow.
Grew up in when I was there, and so it was nice to be close to home. And we've always loved Arizona, and so it's always been sort of home for us.
So I remember I was at Luke, 89 to 95, before, the 101 just I think went up to maybe Olive or so. It didn't go up that far. And when there were still fields, down there. Litchfield Park was it. To the south of the base, there wasn't anything. You just pass Litchfield Park, and then you get on the I-10. And now it's so different down there.
Definitely, it's definitely grown. It's all one big giant city from Apache Junction, almost Globe, until all the way to the White Tanks and the west side, and it's just one big giant city now. Yeah,
so a lot different than Alaska, than
for sure.
Elmendorf. So Hoyt mentioned that kind of stole you away, or we were competing with Alaska. So it sounds like you really enjoyed your time up there.
We did. We really did. We sort of fell in love with Alaska. My initial plan when we were here for so long at Luke was that I would finish my time in the military and then come back to Arizona. Those plans sort of changed when we fell in love with Alaska.
Wow.
We had decided, we love the outdoors, we love the small town feel throughout the entire state. It sort of had that feel, and so we liked the community there, and so we had decided that's probably where we're going to stay permanently after that. And when I retired from the Air Force, I started looking, or getting ready to retire from the Air Force, I started looking more closely for jobs after military, and I just didn't find anything that felt right or felt like the right place for us up there. And so I started, spreading my feelers out to other parts of the country, and specifically looking for places that were smaller town feel and mountains and trees and all that stuff that we loved up there. And Payson popped up on the search, and that had been a place that I had been considering before we fell in love with Alaska, and so I sort of jumped on that idea. And
so growing up in Phoenix, was it a case where you had come to Payson before, or the country, or spent time up here?
Yeah, we spent lots of time. I spent lots of time personally, camping and hiking and things up on the Mogollon Rim. I was active in like Boy Scouts and stuff growing up and as a teenager, and so Payson was the go-to place for getting in the outdoors and camping and hiking, and so I already knew I loved the area well before I knew that I'd be working here. So.
Gotcha. So it wasn't a real hard sell then. It's
not really hard. No. Once I came to grips that we weren't going to find what was matched for me up there in Alaska, it just everything fell into place for Payson. Wow.
And as you said, Hoyt, you're very thankful that that was Dr. Palmer's decision to come to Payson.
I've learned the hard way as an enthusiastic hospital CEO in rural settings that you don't want to over-recruit. And then you end up with a physician who comes and then 3 years later leaves. And so I've learned that you mention all the positives, of course, and then you mention the reasons they may not want to come. And you let them make the decision. And so I was hopeful. I wasn't certain that Dr. Palmer and his wife would choose to come here, but I knew that they were informed, and what, like you said, he's already familiar with the area, knows the pros and what cons there may be depending on the person. And so, but we were thrilled when Dr. Palmer shared that he was going to accept our offer. That was one of the high points in my 3 years here. So we're appreciate it.
And that reminds me of an approach or a tactic: undersell, over deliver.
Yeah, that's the task I had now. Dr. Palmer has come and he is working hard. He's already seen a lot of patients, and we're getting lots of compliments. You can tell by his demeanor and who he is. Very humble, and patients love you. And but not only that, you do great surgeries, and so the OR team, they're the best judges. You know what I mean, in a way. And the OR team loved Dr. Palmer, and that's anesthesia. Those are pre-op nurses, post-op nurses, scrub techs that are right there at the bed at the side handing instruments. I don't know that it's a lot like the show MASH, just saying, but probably not.
Maybe a little different.
I figured. But their feedback's great. The team, everyone that meets Dr. Palmer, just really enjoys him. So we're very fortunate, and we hope we're Dr. Palmer's final stop in his career, and he's a young guy, so that's a good thing for us.
Oh yes. So coming out of the Air Force, Dr. Palmer, what would you say was the biggest difference that you saw coming into the private sector and that banner?
Well, I guess one thing we had to do or dealt with a lot more in the military was sort of the military hierarchy and command and things like that. So it's a little different type of organization than in civilian hospitals for good reasons. I mean, their primary mission is military and defending and the interests of the United States. So they're as a sort of not a secondary, but as a supporting role, we do the medical mission, but the supporting role to the military mission. And so in that sense, we had a lot of focus on the military mission as well and the command structure. So I did a lot of administrative type things in the command structure, especially as I was in longer. Whereas I don't have to deal with that side of things in the civilian world. On the other hand, one thing I've had to come to grips with or deal with as a civilian that I didn't have to in the military is the whole insurance payee. Up there, especially in a smaller area community in Alaska, we were all referring to ourselves. I mean, all the military physicians referred to the military physicians. We were all in the same general area. We did support retirees as well in the community, but for the most part, they were people that were being seen by the military physicians. So here or outside the military, we are a lot more separate entities that are trying to work together. Whereas there, it was all one system. So just a little different. I wouldn't say better or worse either way.
Different.
Just different.
Welcome to the world of insurance.
That's right.
My least favorite subject.
We won't go there. No, that's so yeah, and it's interesting. Thinking about that. How about one of the things I noticed separating and getting out of the military, camaraderie. So in the military, you have a real strong sense of camaraderie, especially when you go outside the U.S. And even though you were still in a state, it's a little different, being in Alaska rather than, down in the lower 48.
Right.
But I would imagine at the hospital, there is a stronger sense of camaraderie than if you go to just kind of like your average business or, just go somewhere. And
absolutely,
yeah. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, for sure. I guess with the military, it's a big community, and there's some camaraderie even with people that you've never met in the military community. I mean, even after being retired, I run into people that have been in the military, and there's an instant connection there. So that's a nice thing. But it's really nice here specifically, being in a small community hospital. We feel more family-like here as well, and so that camaraderie on a different scale, on a different level, is still there, and that's one thing that really attracted me to this smaller town, is that as opposed to being in a facility that has 500 beds, where everybody may sort of feel lost in the population. Here we feel like a big community, a smaller community, that there's a lot of the camaraderie still in a sense.
Well, again, if you're just tuning in or just started watching on our Facebook Live, we're talking with our new General Surgeon, Dr. Bruce Palmer, and CEO of Banner Payson Medical Center, Hoyt Scablin. And Dr. Palmer's response reminds me a little of the residents that we've had in here over the years. And that's something that they all seem to comment on, is the closeness, the community, and feeling closer to the patients, being able to have that relationship where they wouldn't have that in a big city.
It's more challenging to me. It depends on the specialty and how many visits a doctor has with a patient. But there's no question that in a smaller community, you're going to see Dr. Palmer at a store. You're going to see him at a community event. You'll recognize him because he's in the newspaper and he's on Facebook. Big city, just not going to happen. You can disappear into the crowd and you're not really known. I love that. It's a sense of accountability.
It is.
Because everyone knows I grew up in a very small town, much smaller than Payson, more like Heber. And when you made mistakes as a teenager, everyone knew, and I didn't make any big mistakes, but you do something dumb, or how many free throws you made at the basketball game, and everybody knew,
Yeah.
I like that because I think it lends itself to making better choices. I think in today's world, there's just so much contention that maybe that's beginning to lose some of that value, but for me, it hasn't lost any value. I like being accountable to the community. I like being part of Dr. Palmer likely knows every name of every employee in the OR now, and they all know him. in a larger OR, they'll know who the surgeon is that day, but the surgeon will likely not know who's assisting them and not know who so I like that sense of accountability, and with accountability comes a sense of intimacy, and that's a source of great joy. Your pride to look after each other, won't let each other fail. One of the things we try to we want people to know our standards from the day they begin working with us, so that they'll hold up those standards. We like to do peer interviewing. We like to have staff help select the new hires, because then if they hired them, they're like, hey, you can't do that here. We don't do that here. But if I hire them alone, oh, look who Hoyt hired. You know what I mean? So it's kind of that feeling of camaraderie.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And back to your residency comment, though.
Yeah.
I would like to add to what you were saying. Dr. Lauren Washatka, she now works for Ponderosa Family Care as a med peds physician, which is a internal medicine physician specialty, and a pediatrician. Trained 4 years instead of 3 in either of the other. Really uniquely trained. Dr. Alan Michaels is also med peds, and so is Judy Hunt. She came to Payson as a third-year medical student, not with rural experience. Tasted that camaraderie, and now chose to return to Payson. Not only rural, but to Payson. So there is power in that. So hats off to the University of Arizona, to Dr. Hunt, to Dr. Michaels, to the MHA Foundation for having the vision to say, let's do something really unique and have medical students at the University of Arizona in their 3rd year of training, have them to perform that entire year in Payson. That was pretty cutting edge at the time. We're still known in many conferences. Payson is still highlighted as for its innovation of exposing future physicians to rural settings, and when they taste it, they like it. And not all, there are those that grew up rural that want to change and they want to go metro, and then there's those that grew up metropolitan and never have really tasted a long-term experience in rural and they love it, and those that don't, they want to have a much larger shopping selection, whatever it might be closer to the international airport. Well, to each his own, and I'm kind of glad. I'm kind of glad that a minority of us in this country prefer rural living, because it keeps it kind of rustic and nice and personal.
Well, it's good with that training. It gives those residents a more well-rounded training. It gives them exposure to a rural community, a rural setting. So that way, when they make that decision, they have that experience to base their decision off of, instead of just speculating. And also, if they go try it and it's not for them, well, now they're leaving, and so that exposure, that experience is very valuable.
I agree, and like with Dr. Palmer, when he expressed his interest in Alaska, I was actually even more intrigued with him, because I knew he could enjoy living here, and I knew that he wasn't foreign to being, having a limited number of shopping destinations, not poor limitation, just a limited number.
Yeah.
So we knew that he would do well here, and so that was a miracle.
Yeah. And how does being a general surgeon at Elmendorf up there, what is it like, I guess, on a daily basis compared to here at Banner? Is it a lot different as far as volume, your role, the team you're working with? How does it compare?
Yeah, actually we probably had a little bit less volume up there per surgeon, and quite a bit less, because we also had gastroenterology. You covered all of the scopes, endoscopy, or the majority of those, and so we have that difference here, where we are the endoscopists up here, so there was that sense. It was a little bit lighter schedules as far as the number of patients we would see. The hospital itself was very similar in size, actually, to Payson, and I liked that. I liked that about the hospital. The staff that were there, there was the camaraderie there as there is here. The drawback in the military system is that, as young people are coming into the military, they do a good job and they get promoted out of that job. And so continuity was a little bit more difficult. We'd have a OR tech that would be there for a couple of months, and then we would get a different OR tech, and we often would have, you know, a different OR tech every time we operated. So that was a drawback, as opposed to here where I know the techs and they know me. We're getting to know, you know, what each other does and likes and those kinds of things. So some definite similarities, obviously some definite differences as well.
So I have to ask, the hiking, is it better here in Payson or up there in Elmendorf?
Well, I think it's that's a tough question.
And you've only been here how many months?
I've only been here 4 months.
So
I have a lot more experience hiking up there.
Yes,
because we did a lot of hiking up there, especially obviously during the summer when there was, you know, dirt on the ground instead of just snow and ice. But
tundra.
but we I mean the hikes that I've been on here have been beautiful and I've enjoyed them. I'd have to say I still have some catching up to do to try to get into the class that I had up there.
There's something about Alaska is there's so much terrain that doesn't have a home on it.
Right.
And you don't see mankind. There's still symbols, but sometimes you can get places where you can only see forest and no electrical poles, no
a lot
sign
of hiking.
mankind.
Yeah, a lot of hiking we did up there. We'd hike for hours and not see anybody on the trails because there's so many places to hike up there. Still learning the spaces up here, so.
Yeah, but I think in a year, I have to have you back on.
Yeah.
In a year, after you get a full summer,
Right,
you know,
right.
under your belt, and
He and his son went camping and hiking not too long ago.
Yeah.
So it'll give us some time. I would say I am beginning to become suspicious that Dr. Palmer brought all of this cold weather with him. I guess we'll take it as worth it.
It's in the 50s this week.
I know,
Come
this
on,
week's gonna be
boy.
great.
This has been a warm winter for us. It's been nice.
Oh, it's been warm. We were up at my in-laws in Ammon, Idaho, by Idaho Falls, and I was complaining it was 15 degrees. I said,
Yeah.
I'm so glad I live in Payson. Then we came home, we must have brought it from Idaho, because then all of a sudden we went down into those teens, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm getting thin-blooded. I grew up in the mountains and
Right.
17 below, and now I can't tolerate 17.
So you're trying to blame it on Dr. Palmer.
It might actually be me and my wife who brought this back. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Gals and guys.
No, but that's the extent or how extreme it gets in Payson. You maybe
Right.
have a week or so of the temperatures down in the 30s, the teens at night, and then it's back up to the 40s, you know, 50s,
Yeah.
which it's very mild.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we've really enjoyed it, and the bit of snow that we've had has been nice, and then it melts and we can drive without worrying
Yeah.
about skidding off the road.
Yeah. So now you said you went from Elmendorf to Virginia, and then you came here to Payson. So you had a chance to adjust, you know, back to kind of a normal, I would call it normal daylight and nighttime schedule. Was that a big adjustment coming from Alaska and being up there for 5 years?
A little bit. I mean, it was really hot that first summer we were there. I mean, well, the only summer we were there. We got there in end of July or middle of July, and it was just really hot compared to what we were
Alaska.
used to up in Alaska.
And was that where in Virginia?
Hampton, Virginia. It's
So around Virginia
Langley Air
Beach?
Force Base.
Langley?
It's across the water from Virginia Beach.
Yeah, okay.
But it was beautiful.
Yes,
There was beauty there as well. It was very green. There was a lot of history there, of the United States history, while I was at work, my wife did a lot of exploring with the U.S. history sites there, and so that it was really enjoyable there too. We lived on base there, which was a nice community of itself. It was part of Hampton, but it was sort of isolated from Hampton, and so it really did feel like a small town feel on the base in the community. And so we did enjoy our time there. We were only there for really about 10 months. And then we went back up to Alaska for a couple of months to get our house ready to sell and enjoy one last summer up there before saying goodbye from there. So I think that helped with the adjustment actually, because we sort of had a known temporary assignment that was out of Alaska, and it made it easier when I needed to broaden my search outside.
Did you at any point really seriously consider Virginia or back east or anywhere?
Not really. I mean, like I said, it was beautiful there. It was green. There's lots of trees and stuff like that, and there were some definite advantages of the history. But most of our family is in the West, and so if we weren't going to be able to have Alaska, we were sort of wanting to be closer to family, and that was sort of how the decision point. We didn't really, at least at that point, didn't really consider any places in the East.
And that's right, before the program you said you have 4 adult children.
We do.
And are they all in Arizona or out west somewhere?
No, actually they're scattered all over the place.
Okay.
So right now we have our oldest daughter is in Logan, Utah. She's working up there. She works for the university up there and for the state of Utah as a dietitian. And then my next son is doing his master's program in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh wow. Okay.
So that was actually kind of nice to be in Virginia, closer
Yes.
to him and within a day's drive. But he's getting ready to graduate and doesn't have a set job yet, so we don't know where he's going to end up permanently. My third son is finishing up his bachelor's degree up at BYU, Idaho, in Rexburg, Idaho, and he's and don't know where he's going to be for sure. He's looking at a college for a master's degree back in the East, but still working on deciding for sure. And then our youngest son actually just returned from being in Africa doing missionary work for the last 2 years, and he left from Alaska. Spent a month or so here with us.
You told him that you moved, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But after spending a month here with us, when he got back, he's back up in Alaska.
Okay.
He's going to spend a few months up there, back with his friends and enjoying doing some working, earning money for college. And so we're literally
spread all over
4 different states, covering from Alaska to Georgia right now. So, so we're here in Arizona, which is sort of where our roots are.
Well, I know Hoyt is very, very, very happy that you are here in Arizona, and I'm sure the team, OR team at Banner Payson Medical Center is very happy to have you as well.
We've had three providers join us this year, or last year. Dr. Bruce Palmer was the last of them, but Jody Strand was one of the first, and she was one of those same moments of joy. And then Dr. Michael Manning, orthopedic surgeon, who we hope to have featured on your program at some point in the future. I would say, so if any of the listeners, if you have an emergency condition to come to the ER that requires surgery, we have either Dr. Olson or Dr. Horn or Dr. Palmer on call. But hopefully those emergencies don't happen to you, but if we're there for you, if you need us, and then but to see Dr. Palmer, typically a primary care provider, your PCP would refer you to him, but do you can a patient come see you without a referral? Or
it sort of depends on, I've learned, it sort of depends on their insurance. Some insurances allow self-referrals, some insurances require a primary physician or primary doctor to refer them to specialties. So it really depends on the insurance.
But they could, for the listeners, if you're intrigued as much as I am by Dr. Palmer, and you have a need to see a general surgeon, ask your primary care physician or provider to refer you to him, or if your insurance allows, call and come and see him. I think you'll see that he's very pleasant to work with, a great communicator, and very skilled and knowledgeable in the ways of surgery, general
Thank you,
surgery.
that's very kind.
Oh, that's good. Well, it is 10:30, so great program. Thank you so much, Dr. Palmer, for coming on this morning.
Thanks.
Thank
for
you,
having us.
Hoyt.
Thank you, Michael, for always, thank you for your service as mayor. Thanks for having us on the program.
You're very welcome. My pleasure. And it's great to introduce people, to introduce your new doctors and nurses and staff to the public. So I have a lot of fun with that. It's good.
We look forward to the next program. We'll try to keep them interesting.
Oh, yes, always. Well, it's time to get back to the music here on KRIM with The Who, Rolling Stones, ZZ Top, and more. But first, let's get a quick update from the National Weather Service.
With this morning's KRIM weather forecast for Payson and surrounding areas.
All right, see you again.